right, for more on these key Trump foreign policy developments, let's bring in U.S.-Israel Education Association Director of Policy and Foreign Policy Consultant, E.J. Kimball, and former Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary under President Biden, Sabrina Singh. Guys, thank you for joining us this afternoon. EJ, all this discussion, can Iran have any nuclear program as long as they don't build a bomb, or does it all have to be ripped out?
Look, the Iranians need to get rid of this enrichment program completely. I was just in Israel a couple weeks ago, and everyone that I met with there was very clear
that Israelis want no part of
there
any
will be no
program.
Iranian nuclear program there. Finished. And the Israelis, even though we've heard the leaks that came out with the New York Times article about President Trump waving off an Israeli strike, the Israelis are going to get rid of this threat if they feel that it threatens their existence. And we saw that today in Lebanon with a strike on a suspected Hezbollah house. The Israelis are not going back to an October 6th mindset. And for the U.S. here, it has to be very clear to the Iranians that they will not be allowed to continue with this nuclear enrichment program. And the only way to actually get that across is to have a credible military threat. The moving of a second aircraft carrier into the region, the attacks on their proxies in Yemen have sent a message to the Iranians that something needs to change or you will not be here anymore.
Sabrina, you guys went through this months, years with the Iranians, trying to restart some type of nuclear agreement. Why did that fail, and can it succeed now?
Well, it failed because under the first Trump administration, Donald Trump withdrew the United States from that agreement. So you're looking at why we are here today. It is because of that collapse that the administration originally pulled us out of that.
Getting them a new deal, that attempt failed.
I think right now, Iran is economically, financially, and militarily isolated. And because of, what the United States did with Israel and some of the responses to Iran's attack on Israel, Iran is severely weakened. So it is a good moment for the Trump administration to take advantage and continue these talks. And I think it's good to see, I think another third round of talks are going to happen possibly next weekend. This is a good thing. We never want to see Iran get to the point where they can reach a nuclear weapon. But again, I know we're at this moment and we want to put it into context, but context is important that we're basically negotiating the deal that Donald Trump pulled the United States out of now.
Can Donald Trump, the Trump administration, President Trump, get a better deal than the deal that the Obama administration reached in 2015?
I think it's possible to get a better deal, but it also depends on what the Iranians are willing to do. Any negotiation cannot succeed if the sides don't have any overlap in their red lines. So right now, the Iranians' red lines are contradicting our red lines. And if that's the case, there will be no deal. There is no way to make a deal there. But President Trump looks at deal making and foreign policy in general holistically. He's looking at it not just diplomatically, but the military posturing, economics, and trade. All of that comes together, and that's where this maximum pressure campaign on the Iranians, it's still ramping up. They're still being hit. I mean, he's been in less than 100 days. This is still impacting, and it is growing and getting more challenging for the Iranian regime to keep control in the country and keep the people satisfied with where things are going. So they can make a better deal. The Iranians want a guarantee that the deal won't be, changed in the future. The only way to do that is to have it as a treaty in the Senate. And there's no way that the United States Senate is going to approve a deal that allows Iran to still be able to enrich uranium.
It's a high bar. And, you have Steve Witkoff, who's negotiating this, also dealing with Russia negotiations. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio, here's what he had to say about the patience that the United States has in those discussions. Listen to this.
The president has spent 87 days at the highest level of his government repeatedly taking efforts to bring this war to an end. We need to determine very quickly now, and I'm talking about in a matter of days, whether or not this is doable over the next few weeks. If it is, we're in. If it's not, then we have other priorities to focus on as well.
So if the United States is out, Sabrina, what's the next step?
Well, I think also important here is that, as president-elect, Donald Trump said he would end this war on day one. And what you're seeing is diplomacy is very difficult. And you have an actor in Vladimir Putin who's really not serious about these negotiations. I mean, you have to also remember that very early on in the administration, Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, others put a clean ceasefire on the table, and Ukraine accepted that, and Russia did not. So I think the important question here is if the United States walks away from these talks that they've been overseeing. What does that mean for military support? Does Ukraine not get any military support anymore from the United States? Is intelligence sharing turned off? And then I think broader, what kind of message does that send to our allies and partners? Because the message it sends to Russia, to China, to Iran, it's very clear that we're willing to walk away from a partner in Europe. And I think that is going to send a huge ripple effect throughout the geopolitical system.
EJ, does President Trump come back if these negotiations fail and put sanctions on Russia, pressure Russia, or where does the U.S. go from there?
There's already sanctions on Russia, and Russia's been isolated to a large extent for the past few years. I think this is why it is so important and critical to secure a minerals deal with Ukraine, because it invests the United States directly in their future. And the discussions are that this will get signed this upcoming week, but that is vitally important to put some additional levers against Russia, because right now that is the big challenge: is what does the U.S. have outside of a military strike, which the U.S. is not prepared to do or engage? What other levers can we use with the Russians to bring them to the table?
Okay, EJ Kimball, Sabrina Singh, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Really appreciate it.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.